Mouvement.
Change.
Cinéma.
Création.
Action.
Gender equality.
Feminism.
Indépendance.
Engagement.
Parité.
Role model.
Représentation.
Sororité.
Mindset.
Empowerment. First episode, Agnès Varda.
Women in motion.
It's been 5 years since Women in Motion, a program initiated by Caring, launched in partnership with the Cannes Film Festival. Its mission is to promote equality of the sexes and to shine a light on the contributions of women directors and actors to the world of the silver screen by giving them a platform. So many women have come forward to tell their story, talk about their journey, and share their vision of cinema. Since 2015, 50 talks have been organized. Today, to celebrate the 5th anniversary, and at a time when Women in Motion is broadening its horizons to other cultural fields like photography, as WOMO will be present in Arles, we want to take you back and revisit 5 foundational talks. 5 talks that illustrate the identity and diversity of Women in Motion, as the interviewees are none other than Agnès Varda, Jodie Foster, Salma Hayek, Aissa Maiga, and Emilia Clarke. Their experience and voice is all the more important in the wake of what happened in October 2017, when women massively started breaking their silence with the hashtags #MeToo and Time's Up. Everything has changed since. The focus has started to change. Mentalities are starting to change. A collective awakening is underway. Today, it's clear we need to question the mechanisms that ensure that the movie world is still too often a boys' club. It's important to re-examine its history, re-evaluate the contribution of women to that history, and ultimately write a new history.
Follow your inspiration. Never had a piece of paper on which is written, there's my planning for next year, for the next 5 years. I've often done things at the last minute.
For this first episode, we're going to start with a tremendous filmmaker who recently passed away. Through her career, her work, her personality, and even her haircut, she is perhaps the director who most influenced other women movie makers in France and across the world. I'm of course talking about Agnès Varda. When she died at the age of 90, Agnès Varda still had her signature bowl cut, dip-dyed hair, as well as 30 films and documentaries under her belt. I try to make movies the way I feel them and when I feel them, she said. And perhaps that's the key to her work, which was profoundly free and radical in form as well as in the subjects she chose to tackle. When you hear the name Varda, you automatically think about the French New Wave and classics such as Cleo from 5 to 7, Vagabond, The Gleaners and I, and so many others. Though colossal, it took years for her extensive body of work to receive the recognition it deserved. In that sense, Varda's story is typical, symptomatic of women in the arts. Recognition comes late, they're eclipsed by their male colleagues, struggle to finance their projects, and therefore, too often, limit themselves to smaller productions. Varda was always able to work around the obstacles. She evolved outside the system or parallel to it, and throughout her life, she set her own rules and gave herself the means to her independence.
Freedom.
Je n'ai pas fait carrière, j'ai fait des films.
I didn't make a career, I made films. That's because a career supposes a certain number of successes. Money, being recognized by the money people.
Et ma liberté a été d'abord j'ai eu.
My freedom came first. In fact, I only had 1 or 2 producers, Georges de Beauregard and Mag Baudard. Later, they truly abandoned me, and this little company that I created in 1954 called Ciné Tamaris, and that still exists, amazingly so, currently run by my dear daughter, Rosalie, and my dear son, Mathieu. I'm still involved a little bit, however. We have endured because the films I made, thanks to this company, meant trying to get the needed money. We didn't always find all the money we needed, and for the good reason I was not accepted by the cinema people nor the distributors. I didn't suffer like some high-profile women, whether it be actresses who said they were only used as supporting roles or whether it be women producers. None of that bothered me, as if it never applied to me. What mattered to me was to make innovative films, make independent films, avoid using character norms, filming or editing norms.
First movie.
Agnès Varda started her professional career as a photographer. It was in 1954 that she decided to go behind the film camera and direct her first movie. For that, she returned to the setting of her youth, a down-to-earth port city in the south of France called Sète. Agnès Varda was born in Belgium in 1928. During the war, she and her family fled Nazi occupation, finding refuge in Sète in 1940. In Sète, there is a fisherman neighborhood called Pointe Courte, a place she knew well as a teenager. It's there that she set and shot her first feature-length film. She also borrowed its name for the film's title. La Pointe Courte revolutionized storytelling at the time. It was free and unburdened by the realism that continued to bog down cinema in the 1950s. It tells the story of a man, played by actor Philippe Noiret, who returns to his childhood town. His wife joins him and announces she's leaving him. The movie, filmed in black and white, follows his wandering and introspection, and ultimately how the couple gets back together. The film came out in 1955 and stayed on the screen for just 2 weeks. But its legacy was enormous. It marked a double birth, that of Varda as a movie maker and that of a movement that would permanently shake up 20th century cinema, the New Wave.
On était 7 en tout, y compris les acteurs.
There were 7 of us in all, including the actors, and we stayed in the same house. In fact, that was done totally outside the world of cinema, and that when the film was done, I never had to suffer through anything. I was always independent and still poor as ever, and at the same time, I was called the grandmother of the New Wave when it began. But at that time, it was a true phenomenon, a UFO kind of film lost in space. It came out 2 years later for 15 days in a little movie theater. That was my first film's career. I thought to myself that in literature you have Joyce, Dos Passos, Virginia Woolf, writers who changed literature. There were artists like Marcel Duchamp, Picasso, whom I idolized. The film writing I wanted to do was so radical that in the film a chapter on a couple alternated with a chapter on fishermen, and so on, etc. I really enjoyed this type of writing that could not fit in the film industry.
Feminism.
Je suis absolument féministe. Quelquefois, on me dit, est-ce que vous êtes encore
I am totally feminist.
Encore.
Some people ask me, are you still a feminist? I say yes, still and totally. I marched for women's rights for those we were able to demonstrate for, and I never wanted to become the filmmaker for feminism. I believe in my way of looking at the world and women. I was sometimes a feminist in a rather subtle way.
Cléo de 5 à 7.
Varda's feminism wasn't always head-on or obvious, but it was always present in the way she dealt with gender stereotypes and in the way she built her characters. In 1962, she completed her second film, which went on to be her most famous, Cléo from 5 to 7. Its opening credits have been critically acclaimed themselves. You see the hands of a fortune teller drawing cards that will influence the fate of the lead character, Cleo, as she waits for the results of a cancer test, a wait also experienced by the viewer, as the film is shot in real time.
Voyons le passé. Vous avez eu un jeune amoureux. Il vous a influencé pour votre carrière ou appris votre métier. Est-ce que votre mère était veuve?
Non.
Alors, vous avez près de vous une veuve qui vous tient compagnie, qui n'est peut-être pas très scrupuleuse pour la conduite de votre vie, mais elle vous est très dévouée.
Oui, c'est vrai.
Elle vous a fait partir de votre ville natale ou de votre milieu familial vers une vie plus libre que de ce fait, vous avez pu rencontrer un homme de cœur très généreux. Il vous donne les moyens de vous consacrer aux arts. Je vois que vous avez un certain talent. Vous êtes musicienne peut-être.
Let's listen to Agnès Varda explaining the structure of the film and its meaning.
J'ai voulu, et ça c'était une chose très importante pour moi, que les
I wanted my 90-minute film, and this is very important for me, to be cut in half, exactly 45 minutes. That's to say that the first part of the film, I don't know if people realized it, is told as seen by others and defined by others, by those who admire her in the street, by people who walk by with their friends who keep looking at her. When she buys a hat, the sales lady asks her for an autograph. She's beautiful. The men in the street look at her. She even identifies with the way people look at her. And at this moment, as you will see in the scene, it's as if all of a sudden something gets torn. From then on, she goes out and she is the one who is looking at others. She's going to see how people earn a living in the street. You'll see it's quite trivial. She walks into a cafe, she sees no one is listening, and then she meets a friend. And the entire second part of the film, up to when she meets a soldier who himself is afraid because he is fighting in the Algerian War. That is to say, there are really two Clios and two films of 45 minutes.
Vous avez l'air d'attendre quelque chose, pas quelqu'un.
J'attends le résultat d'un examen.
Ah, vous êtes étudiante?
Non, un examen médical, une analyse.
Et vous êtes inquiète?
Très, oui.
De quoi avez-vous peur?
Le cancer, je crois. Je le saurai ce soir.
J'ai toujours essayé de filmouiller des émotions, des sentiments.
I always tried to film emotions, feelings that are basically structured. Structured in real time, structured in the building and the evolution of this woman. As if in 90 minutes, I could relate the fundamental change, thanks to the use of cuts and in real time as well.
Antoine Millois. Another important and feminist film by Varda called Vagabond won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival in 1985. In many ways, Vagabond was ahead of its time, focusing on the condition of homeless women wandering the countryside. There's no romanticism or hope, only the documentation of the relentless gaze that society has on minorities. The film opens on a tracking shot of an inanimate body in a ditch. It's that of the lead character, Mana.
I wanted to tell the story of the last 2 or 3 months of a young girl in revolt. Because revolt is part of the women's movement. Women often have to go through a revolt to get out of a particular situation, against their condition, against how their fathers treat them, their husbands, their employers. That can go as far as saying, okay, I'm leaving, I'm out of here, I'm leaving everything behind. And this Mona, I must say that I was lucky that she was played by Sandrine Bonnaire, who was discovered by Maurice Pialat. She was 17 and a half when she did the film with me, and we celebrated her 18th birthday on the shoot. So a very young woman indeed.
Y a la radio?
Non.
Tout le confort, mais pas de radio. Il est nul ton bahut. Même pas de radio.
Bon allez, je m'arrête ici. Alors tu te débarques.
Tu transportes pas gratis, toi, hein? Bon, allez, salut.
Her temperament of a young girl in revolt fit perfectly with the character I had imagined in a screenplay. It's a fiction film, but there is this documentary texture to it that interests me in real life. Once again, when you tell a story and treat the subject, it has to be structured. This film was structured by 13 tracking shots, all from right to left, that tell the story. In fact, it's a girl walking in 13 tracking shots, and between these shots, she meets people. People talk about her, and there again, she's described by how people judge her. Their judgment on this girl who is walking on the road is very negative. On top of her being dirty, she's rude, and she says shit all the time. When the film came out, we printed up a little publicity sticker to put on cars that said, "She stinks and she'll never say thank you. Would you pick up the hitchhiker?" I was really interested in questioning people because I think that films are not made for the viewer to go see a film, believe everything, and walk out like a moron, even if the film is wonderful. Every moviegoer is a witness for the characters in the film. This approach sometimes makes films a little difficult to watch, but for me it is interesting in terms of storytelling.
Gender and work.
When I started in cinema, there were not a lot of women who wanted to make films and not a lot of women technicians. This is one thing I used to say to women, wake up, you can do most of the jobs in cinema. Then we saw about 7 or 8 women directors of photography in France who are outstanding and who were hired by men to make the films.
des ingénieurs du son, des productrices.
There are sound engineers, women producers.
Je peux dire avec fierté qu'en 1976, il y a déjà longtemps.
And I can say with pride that in 1976, quite a while ago, I had the first team made up of as many women as men.
One Sings, the Other Doesn't is Varda's most openly feminist film. It tells the story of two women who cross paths over a 10-year period. They become friends at the end of the 1960s, each fighting in her own way for the right to become a woman. It's a beautiful film shot in Paris, the south of France, and Iran, with in the backdrop the May 68 uprising and the struggle for women's rights.
Je suis femme, je suis moi, ni déesse, ni diablesse, ni faiblesse. Je suis femme, je suis moi.
Dans L'une chante, l'autre pas,
in One Sings, the Other Doesn't, L'une chante, l'autre pas, I had a female camera operator, a female production designer, and a female focus puller. We even made the remark on set that we had a lot of kids. And we said, it's not only the women who have to take care of the kids. I even took a picture of the grip with his gloves in the midst of changing a baby's diaper on the set. I remember a production director giving another baby his bottle. We had said that both the men and women had to take care of the babies while on set. So this was a daily part of our lives. It didn't come from a feminist theory. It was just a well-balanced team in a happy mood. That made the men be in a good mood. There were even those who told me that upon arrival on set, they saw the script girl and the makeup artist at the first cocktail on the first night in a cafe, and they started making bets. Who would be the first to sleep with the scriptwriter? Who would be the first to sleep with the makeup artist? But as there were 10 men and 10 women, there was a lot to do. And in the end, it was just a happy mood that prevailed, as if there were no further issues on sexuality in the middle of the work issue. Just the same, obviously there were all sorts of stories, but told in a rather joyous manner. I think that trying to be a feminist can exist in many different ways. I myself have always thought that we are just a little part of the world and that women's condition in the entire world is catastrophic. And in many countries it's a disaster and nothing is changing and we cannot change it. There are women who are mutilated, excised, a total horror. There are women who are mistreated, even in France, even in so-called industrialized countries. There are a lot of battered women, we know that. But in our job, whatever we do, I think we need to search our own conscience and do what we can in the environment around us.
Models.
Creativity is also about sharing, passing on. There's what we see in others, what we admire in them, and what we steal sometimes. In the career of a female artist, this dimension is all the more important, as stories tend to be told from the masculine perspective. It's therefore necessary to find dissident role models, other women for instance, to identify with, measure yourself against, and ultimately find your own voice. Does that mean one can talk about feminine writing, feminine creation? Some find the idea absurd. For others, like Varda, there's a specificity, a way of doing things that she recognized occasionally in the women artists who inspired her. Here she is explaining it.
However, sometimes I have felt something with women, a particular little music. That's not the reason that we should say women have to film feminine. But I have felt something new in certain films, like in Chantal Akerman's films, for example, in Jeanne Dielman, 23, Quai de Commerce in the 1960s. Was really something new. She introduced the question of time. Shirley Clark, who made extremely unique films when no one else was doing that at the time. I think about Lucretia Martel and Claire Denis. Jane Campion's first films were extraordinary. Think of Sweetie, An Angel at My Table. As for the series, there's a woman who's a total rebel and very funny, Lena Dunham, who did a series called Girls. She really worked in her own way. She changed prototypes, the way of filming. She played herself. You get that with all painters. They are often so totally in their own painting.
Niki de Saint-Phal, pour moi, est un modèle de
Niki de Saint-Phal for me is a model of freedom when she took a man's rifle and hit balls of paint to make them explode. Then she did huge women, huge, magnificent formats. And when you know the sufferings she went through in her life and how she blew that into beauty and colors. So there are women who have really succeeded with a woman's way of writing to say things that are an affirmation that women have a vital strength and a creative capacity as great and also as interesting and a little different from that of men. What I would like to do is to think of all women who try, of all women who begin, of all women who don't yet have enough courage, not quite enough inventiveness. And I encourage those women to know that in every woman, in every man, in all children, there exists creativity. There can be something made of it. For that reason, I encourage everyone to wake up.
That brings us to the end of this first episode. I hope you enjoyed it and it made you want to react and communicate about it. Don't hesitate to share, comment, and follow us on Caring's social media. If you want to find out more, head to Women in Motion's playlist on Caring's YouTube channel, where you'll find all the talks. See you soon for the next episode, this time with Jodie Foster. We'll talk about Hollywood, of course, a place she's known since her childhood, as well as her experience in front of and behind the camera.
Women in motion.